Hi, I am Lauren Mitchell, and I want to tell you a story that starts with shame and ends somewhere a little stronger. I was 19 when my older brother leaned across the kitchen counter and said, "You're an embarrassment to us all." His voice was calm, almost gentle, but those words cracked something inside me that I didn't know could break. A week later, my father changed the locks on our family's home in Cincinnati. My mom left a duffel bag with my things on the porch. No goodbye. No explanation, just silence. They said I was reckless, unstable, ungrateful, but what they really meant was, I saw too much. I spoke too loudly, and for that, I had to go. For 15 years, I vanished. I changed my name, chopped off my hair, erased myself from everything that tied me to them. Not out of shame, but because I knew they'd never let me become someone if they knew I already had. And then, one afternoon, I walked into a courtroom where my brother was the one on trial. I didn't say a word, but I didn't have to. The judge paused mid-sentence, looked out across the gallery, and said, "Wait, is that Lauren Mitchell, the governor?" Now, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, tell me where you're watching from and what time it is right now. I always love seeing how far this story travels. So let's begin. It was a heavy July afternoon in Raleigh, North Carolina. Inside the Mitchell household, tension was thick enough to chew. Every Sunday, dinner was a rigid ritual. My father, Robert Mitchell, a retired military colonel turned local law enforcement consultant, sat at the head of the table like a general surveying his troops. My mother, Carol, moved between the kitchen and dining room in stiff silence. At the other end sat David, my older brother. Law school graduate, assistant district attorney, hometown hero. The TV behind him was muted, but his face filled the screen as a local station ran a segment about his latest high-profile case. My dad raised his glass and said, "That's my boy." I sat near the far corner, my plate untouched. No one looked my way. No one asked about my graduation from Appalachian State the previous week, bachelor's in sociology. I hadn't even told them the date. I knew better. They didn't care. I'd always been the odd one. Notebooks filled with poetry, camera rolls of street art, headphones in during dinner. I was 23, brilliant in ways they didn't value, the outcast in a family of achievers. And then came the collapse. It started with a series of messages, texts from classmates, a missed call, a video I never wanted to exist, let alone resurface. Spring break, Panama City, a moment I thought had faded into memory, had been dragged into the spotlight. My ex, bitter and spiteful, uploaded it. He wanted revenge, and he got it. David found the video first. He sent it straight to our father with a note, "We have to contain this." That night, dinner was canceled. My dad stormed into my room, red-faced. "We raised you better than this," he said. "You think you can act like trash and still carry our name?" He didn't let me explain. My degree landed on my bed like an invoice he refused to pay. My mother stood in the doorway, silent, gripping her rosary. My brother watched from behind her, cold, detached. Not even a flinch. The next morning, my dad handed me a prepaid debit card and pointed to the door. "Don't call. Don't come back." My mom left a bag of my clothes on the porch. I stayed one night with a friend. By the third night, I was sleeping in her car. Day 7, I was on a Greyhound headed west. I didn't have a plan, but I knew I couldn't stay. Somewhere outside of Kansas City, at a rest stop lit only by flickering gas station lights, I pulled out a leather journal, one that used to hold my mom's notes, family recipes, birthdays. I tore it page by page and lit them in a paper cup. I watched the fire eat my past until nothing remained. Then I whispered, "They took everything. So now, I'll take what's left and build something better." The bus took me as far as Flagstaff, Arizona. That winter, I lived in a room barely bigger than a closet, shared with 2 other girls who worked night shifts like me. Rent was $310.00. No heat. I worked mornings at a Greasy Spoon diner, evenings scrubbing floors at an urgent care, and nights inputting data for a local delivery company. No one knew my name. I didn't let them. I called myself L now. Just L. I needed to disappear. And yet, at night, when the city quieted down and I could hear the wind outside like a distant memory, I wrote. Not in English, not in full sentences, but in symbols, sketches, codes I invented as a kid, my way of processing, bleeding, surviving. I painted, too, whatever scraps of acrylic I could afford. One painting I hung behind my curtain. It was of a girl mid-fall, melting into her shadow. No one asked about it, and I never offered to explain. Then came the shift. One night at the clinic, I saw a mother, small, shaking, with a toddler on her hip, pleading with a police officer. He shoved a paper in her face. "Just sign," he snapped. She didn't understand. I stepped in. "She's not signing that," I said. He glared at me. "Who are you?" "Someone who knows this form is outdated," I lied. He left, furious. 3 days later, a man in a weathered suit called me into the back office. "You saved her," he said. "Come work for us." His name was Martin Hale. He ran a nonprofit that helped families like hers. I said yes. I didn't care about titles. I wanted to matter. I started small. Copies, coffee, translating documents. But I listened. I learned. I drafted budgets, wrote outreach letters, applied for grants. I took night classes in public policy, learned immigration law from library books, sat in city hall meetings just to hear how the powerful spoke. But the moment I stepped out of the shadows, someone tried to drag me back into them. The nonprofit world didn't come with applause or clean victories, but it gave me something I hadn't felt in years: purpose. I became a quiet force in the immigrant community of Flagstaff. When people needed emergency shelter, I found it. When documents got lost in bureaucracy, I translated and fought through it. I still went by L. It was safer that way. But bit by bit, the girl who once burned a family journal under a rest stop light was becoming someone new. One Friday evening, we hosted a small community event, just a handful of local families, volunteers, and city workers. I was setting up folding chairs when Martin called me aside. "City Council's looking to appoint someone to the Immigration Policy Task Group," he said. "They asked for you." I laughed. "I'm not a lawyer, not even a policy major." Martin just smiled. "You've done more policy in your spare time than most council members do in their career." I said yes before I could talk myself out of it. On my first day at City Hall, I wore the only blazer I owned. I sat quietly through the meeting, speaking only when I had something necessary to say. But when I did speak, people listened. Over the next year, I helped shape housing access protocols, co-authored grant proposals, and worked on emergency visa strategies. Slowly, the people around me stopped calling me L, the assistant, and started calling me Ms. Mitchell. It was surreal. I hadn't heard that name in nearly a decade. I let it happen. I wasn't hiding anymore, not fully, but I wasn't advertising either. Then came a turning point. During a particularly tense council session, a conservative member proposed a partnership with ICE agents to streamline city shelter screenings. I sat still, biting the inside of my cheek, until I couldn't anymore. "If our laws don't evolve to serve justice," I said, standing slowly, "then they're just rituals we cling to so we don't feel afraid." The room froze. Then applause. Not everyone agreed with me, but they respected me. That was enough. That night, my inbox filled with messages. Journalists, community leaders, even old college friends. One subject line read, "The Voice of Flagstaff." I closed my laptop and stared at the ceiling. A month later, I got a call from a local progressive coalition. They wanted me to run for State House. not for any party, as an independent. I thought they were joking, but they weren't. You already do the work, the organizer said. You just don't have the title. I didn't have a family name to fundraise from, no glossy headshots, but I had the work. I had the people. So I launched a campaign. No slogans, just a message, let the work speak first. And then it happened. A national outlet picked up my story. They ran a feature, From Janitor to Policy Powerhouse, Elle's Ascent. And just like that, people started looking for me, including people I thought I'd never hear from again. One Tuesday afternoon, I was reviewing speaking notes for an education policy forum when I saw it. A headline, My Brother David, accused of evidence tampering in a deportation case. It was all over the feeds, commentators calling it a betrayal of justice, his legal team crying foul, and there it was, our family name. Dragged out into the world again. My phone buzzed non-stop. Some reporters had figured it out. That Elle Mitchell, the candidate, was actually Lauren Mitchell, the long-disappeared sister of a disgraced prosecutor. My press team panicked. We should get ahead of it, my manager said. Control the narrative. Another advised, stay silent. Don't get dragged into it. But I didn't see it that way. I booked a flight to Raleigh. No press announcement, no team, just me. I entered the courthouse through a side door. Black slacks, gray blazer, sunglasses. I sat in the back row. David sat at the defense table, jaw clenched, shoulders stiff. My mother sat behind him, aged, hands wrapped around her purse strap like it was the only thing holding her together. My father wasn't there. Then the judge entered, a black woman in her 60s, sharp eyes, voice like gravel. I recognized her from a policy conference I'd once attended. As she scanned the room, her eyes paused on me. Wait, she said, squinting. Is that Lauren Mitchell, the governor's candidate? Every head turned. Whispers erupted. Reporters scrambled. My brother's head snapped back. His mouth fell open. My mother gasped. The judge cleared her throat, waved for order. The trial resumed, but the air never settled. I didn't stay for the verdict. I slipped out the same door I came in. That night, my inbox exploded. Photos, articles. Sister of disgraced Ada resurfaces as state leader. But this time, I stood still, I watched, I waited. But what they found next wasn't just my face, it was my past, and they weaponized it. By the next morning, the internet was on fire. The photo of me sitting in the courtroom circulated everywhere. But it wasn't just the photo. Someone had gone digging, and they found it, that grainy old video, uploaded during spring break years ago, the one I thought had long disappeared into digital ash. It surfaced again, my 23-year-old self blurred but recognizable, my voice, my body, my shame, once again thrown into the public square. Commentators pounced. Some sympathetic, some cruel. A few tried to spin it as a resilience story. Others framed it as scandal. One late-night host joked about it, another brought on my ex for an exclusive interview. He chuckled nervously, shrugged, and said, "We were young. She knew I had the video. Didn't think it would resurface like this." My campaign staff panicked. "We need a response," they said. "We'll issue a cease and desist. We'll threaten legal action. We'll shut it all down." I just stared at the screen. Calm. Blank. I said, "No. Let them look," I whispered. "I've survived being seen before." Then came the call. It was him, my father, Robert Mitchell. I hadn't heard his voice in 15 years. It sounded older, rougher, but still carried that cold authority. "You're using our name for personal gain," he snapped, dragging our legacy through the mud. I closed my eyes and leaned back. "I carried that name long after you dropped me," I said. I didn't stay a Mitchell because of pride. I kept it to remind myself who not to become. He hung up. A few hours later, I got another call, this time from a cousin in North Carolina. My mother had collapsed. Blood pressure spike. She was in the ER. For a few minutes, I sat frozen. Then I booked a flight, red eye. No entourage, just me. I walked into the hospital room in a plain coat and jeans. My mom looked so small in the bed, not the woman who once told me to keep my voice down and legs crossed. She's a tired, aging woman in a paper gown. Her eyes fluttered open. "Lauren," she whispered. Her voice cracked. I didn't speak. "If what they say is true," she said, "then I spent years not seeing you." I sat next to her and held her hand. Not to forgive, not to forget, just because I could. Before I left, I placed a small canvas on the side table, a painting I'd done weeks ago, a silhouette of a woman alone in a field, her shadow stretching long behind her. It was titled, Witness. I didn't leave a note, just walked away. Back in Arizona, my campaign held strong. Voters didn't turn on me. If anything, the firestorm brought more people to my story. They didn't see a scandal. They saw someone who stood tall despite everything. My next event was packed. No flashy intros, just me, a mic, and a message. "I won't rewrite the past," I told the crowd, "but I will decide how it gets used from here on out." That silence after my words, it wasn't fear, it was recognition. Days later, the indictment against David dropped. Official, his law license suspended. Trial pending, suddenly every former ally vanished. Law firms that once hosted fundraisers for him now scrubbed his name from their websites. Reporters circled me again. But I stayed quiet. Then came the unexpected. My mom called. "Please," she said, voice trembling, "come home, just once, for dinner." I didn't respond right away. That night, another message arrived. From my father, just 4 words. "We need to talk." 15 years, and suddenly they remembered my number. I said yes, part curiosity, part closure. I arrived at the house just before sunset. The porch was smaller than I remembered. Inside, everything was polished lemon oil. Staged warmth. My mom opened the door with hopeful eyes. My dad stood stiffly behind her. David sat at the table, quieter than I'd ever seen him. The seat they saved for me had been reupholstered, new leather. Same frame. The meal was elaborate, enchiladas, cornbread, wine no one drank. My mom filled the silence with small talk. "Remember when you used to draw on the napkins?" she asked. My dad added, "Your campaign poster, impressive work." I nodded, listening. Eventually, David spoke. "I messed up. I never thought it would end like this." And then came the ask. My mom leaned forward. "Maybe you could speak to the prosecutor." Just a character statement, not official, just help, family. I looked around the table, at the people who abandoned me, now clinging to a daughter they once discarded. I placed my fork down. "If I weren't the governor," I said slowly, "would I still be your blood?" Silence, thick and heavy. I stood up. "I kept your name," I said, "but I built my life without you in it." Then I walked out. No one followed. No one called after me. The air outside was cool, light. And for once, I didn't carry the weight of that house with me. Just myself. The past wasn't done with me yet. And this time, it wanted more than silence. It was just after 3 a.m. when my phone buzzed. Half asleep, I reached for it and saw them, screenshots, emails, images, flooding in. The spring break video again, but now attached were old private emails, clipped photos, and a grainy image of me crying outside a shelter my first year in Flagstaff. No sender, no caption, just threat disguised as exposure. I stared at the screen in the dark, not with fear, but with a clarity that came from living through words. By 9 a.m., my communications director slid a tablet across my desk. "We've got a problem," she said. A blog post was already gaining traction. The real Lauren Mitchell, leaked files from the candidate's past. I skimmed the piece, recognizing every detail, every humiliation, every moment I had once tucked away like shards of glass, too dangerous to handle. A few hours later, I got a call from an old friend now working in the Justice Department. "You didn't hear this from me," she said quietly. "But your father's been asking questions, background requests, digging for leverage." I hung up, eyes closed. This wasn't concern. This was a message, one meant to scare. So I did what I always did when threatened. I stood up. The next morning I held a press conference. No flags behind me, no handlers flanking my sides, just me and a wall of hand-drawn artwork from the kids I'd worked with over the years. I wore white, clean lines, no jewelry, my hair pinned back. I stepped to the podium and looked straight into the lights. "We've all seen how power works," I began. "Not just with laws and guns, but with reminders. With threats, with dinners disguised as deals." The room stilled. I continued, "This bill is for anyone whose past has ever been turned into a weapon. For whistleblowers, for survivors, for the silenced." I introduced the Justice Witness Protection Bill legislation that would criminalize coercive threats based on personal history toward public figures, whistleblowers, or civil employees. The media erupted. Headlines poured in. "Governor candidate strikes back. Lauren Mitchell redefines political armor." For once, my name wasn't attached to scandal, it was attached to power. But my family? Radio silence. Not a word from my mother. Not a peep from David. And my father? He disappeared into quiet. Until 5 days later, that evening, I attended a cabinet roundtable in Denver. Just as I stepped off stage, my assistant whispered, "Ma'am, there's someone in the lobby, your sister-in-law." I blinked. "David's wife?" "Ex-wife," she corrected. "She's here alone. Says she wants to talk. No press, no cameras." Against every instinct, I nodded. We sat in my office. She looked worn, drained, but her eyes were kind. "I don't want anything," she said. "I just wanted to say I always believed you." Her voice cracked. "You didn't deserve what happened. And I'm sorry for being quiet back then." I didn't say anything at first. Then I nodded. "Thank you." And that was it. No resolution, no grand reconciliation, just a moment. Later that night, as snow began to fall outside my apartment, I sat beside a flickering candle, looking at the photo I always kept near. I had done that years ago, back when I needed to vanish. But now, looking at it, I didn't feel anger, just distance and clarity. Some legacies don't need revenge. They just need to be left behind. The following week, I delivered a keynote at the State Leadership Conference. It wasn't scripted. I spoke from memory, from muscle, from scar tissue. I was called a disgrace, I began. Then I was erased. Then I was threatened not with bullets, but with old photos and family ties. The room was silent. I'm not here for an apology. I'm here so future generations don't have to pick between honesty and belonging. I introduced a second proposal. The Family Transparency Clause, a new addendum to the Public Kinship Act. It allowed public employees to report conflicts of interest involving relatives without fear of retaliation, not just from government bodies, but from within their own homes. The press caught fire again. Some praised the boldness, others criticized it as too emotional. But the message was clear. My story wasn't isolated. It was just the only one being told with a mic. As I left the stage, I caught a glimpse of someone I hadn't expected to see, my mother, sitting quietly in the second row, dabbing at her eyes. She didn't speak, didn't wave, just watched. Farther back, almost hidden in the shadows, stood my father. No badge, no glare, just a man with arms crossed, unsure what to do now that the daughter he discarded was the one rewriting the rule. But not every story ends in fire. Some just end with a door, half open, waiting. 6 months later, I walked into a modest community center in South Denver. No press, no entourage, just a room with 40 folding chairs and a circle of people who thought they were attending a simple leadership panel. I wore jeans, a cardigan, and no title on a name tag. I helped set up chairs, poured myself a cup of coffee, and made small talk like anyone else. When it came time to speak, there was no grand introduction, just 3 chalk words behind me: ruthless leadership. I stepped forward. "People ask me all the time," I began. "How did you make it without family support?" I let the silence hold before continuing. I didn't. I just stopped waiting for them. A ripple of laughter followed. Soft, understanding. "We don't get to choose the blood we come from," I said, "but we do get to choose what parts of that legacy we carry forward and which parts we finally put down." I scanned the crowd and saw heads nodding. In the back, a woman in her 50s raised her hand, her silver-streaked hair framed eyes tired but fierce. "What if one day they really change?" she asked. "What if they come back, different?" I smiled gently. "Then I'll let them tell their story," I replied. "But I've already told mine, and I'm not rewriting it." That's when I saw him, standing at the back of the room, leaning against the wall, hands in his pockets. My father. Robert Mitchell, no suit, no medals, just a man with weathered skin and uncertain eyes. I didn't stop speaking, but I held his gaze, not with defiance, but clarity. When the talk ended, people clapped, not out of habit, but recognition. Slowly, the crowd thinned. And still he stood there. Eventually, he made his way forward. Not quickly, not confidently, just a man walking across years he couldn't erase. "I never understood you," he said when he reached me. "But today I realize maybe I don't have to." He looked down at his shoes, then back at me. "Maybe it's enough just to admit you did what I never could." I didn't hug him. I didn't cry. I simply nodded. A small, final kind of peace. Outside, the snow had started to fall again, soft, quiet. Children ran past, bundled in coats, chasing each other across the nearby park. I stepped out into the cold. I didn't look back, didn't wave goodbye. Just walked into the streetlight-lit stillness of early winter. I had once fought just to be seen. Now I saw myself clearly enough that I no longer needed witnesses. Later that week, I stood in my office flipping through grant applications when my assistant knocked gently. "Ma'am," she said, "David is in the lobby." I froze. "Did he schedule?" "No, ma'am, says he just wants a moment. No press, no one else." I looked down at my desk, at the stack of policy drafts, at the untouched glass of water. "Send him in," I said. He looked different. Thinner. His suit wrinkled, his eyes shadowed with something between shame and exhaustion. He sat across from me, hands clasped, eyes cast downward. "I didn't know how to start," he began. "But I need to say it. I ruined everything we could have been as siblings. I was jealous. And I didn't realize it until it was too late." I didn't respond. He continued. "I don't want you to save me. I just wanted to tell the truth." A long silence settled between us. Then I said, "You didn't destroy me, David. You just erased me. And when someone gets erased long enough, they figure out how to become unforgettable." Tears welled in his eyes. "Mom still thinks you'll save me," he whispered. I shook my head. "I'm not here to save anyone," I said. "I saved myself so no one could drown me again." As he stood to leave, his hand grazed a paper on the edge of my desk. An unsigned letter of clemency. The one I'd written weeks ago but burned that morning, not because I hated him, but because I had remembered that night 15 years ago, the night he had leaned in and whispered to our father, "She's the one in the video." The door clicked shut behind him. I returned to my work, not bitter, not triumphant, just ready. Some legacies can't be rewritten, but they can end with you. The final story I want to share happened at a conference on family justice reform. Not glamorous, not televised, but powerful. Survivors, whistleblowers, Sons and daughters who'd been punished not for lies, but for telling the truth too close to home. I watched the introductory video from backstage. Blurred faces, altered voices, quiet captions telling loud truths. When I was introduced, the moderator kept it simple. Governor candidate Lauren Mitchell, advocate, reformer, daughter. I stepped on stage and began. I was once called a disgrace. Then I was erased. Then I was threatened, not with violence, but with memories. The room held its breath. I'm not here to demand apologies. I'm here so my future children don't have to choose between their truth and their bloodline. I saw my mother in the second row, smaller now, her eyes wet but steady. Farther back, in the shadows, stood my father. Not a ghost, not a villain, just a man watching something he never helped create. There was an empty chair in the front row, labeled, reserved for the sister she hoped to be. I'd like to announce a new clause, I said, called the Public Kinship Act. It would allow public employees to identify familial conflicts without fear, because silence should never be the price of survival. The press caught on. Op-eds called it radical and necessary. For once, no headline mentioned disgrace. No one called me the forgotten sibling, just a leader who named the wound and planted something new. That was enough. That was everything. If this story moved you, share it. If you found a piece of yourself here, stay close. I don't need to be remembered to keep fighting for the people no one dares to see. But if you're still here, thank you. This is what storytelling can do.